No matter which side you're on, nowadays we have two absolute truths in modern geopolitics. 1. The Russian-American rivalry didn't die with the Cold War. Instead, Putin's Russia still unquestionably sees Uncle Sam as its nemesis. 2. The United States is Israel's main ally, which can be considered the stronghold of the West in the Middle East. For this reason, other European powers, such as Germany, France, and the United Kingdom, also rivals of Russia, support the Jewish state. From these two geopolitical truths, could we think that Russia should condemn Israel? And Tel Aviv certainly gives it plenty of material to create an anti-Zionist rhetoric. Furthermore, both countries have supported opposing sides in the Syrian war, and Moscow has good relations with Israel's arch-enemy, Iran. With all this, we ask ourselves the following question: how is it that Russia has not strongly condemned Israel's actions and instead seems to remain on the sidelines of what is happening in Gaza? Are you interested? Then stay until the end of the video. As always, let's go back to the background, in this case to the beginning of the 20th century when Israel did not exist as a state. Here's a powerful fact to begin. By 1900, the Russian Empire was home to the largest Jewish population in the world, between 5 and 6 million people. That's about 40% of all the Jews in the world. Most of them lived in parts of what are now Poland, Ukraine, Belarus, and Lithuania. The reason is that the now defunct Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was one of the few European countries that never expelled the Jews. And after the annexation of its territories during the era of Catherine the Great, these Jews became part of Russia. And what happened then? They continued doing what they had always done, working as moneylenders since Russian Christians were not allowed to charge interest. And the anti-Semitic ideas that spread throughout Europe also took hold in Russia. Don't think it was an exception. Between 1903 and 1906, there was a series of anti-Semitic pogroms against Jews who were used as scapegoats during the country's economic and political crisis. What a surprise! However, everything would change with the Russian Revolution of 1917. After the Bolshevik victory, the anti-Jewish laws were abolished, and many Jews joined the Communist Party. However, the nascent Soviet Union initially rejected Zionism, considering it bourgeois and nationalist. And in its place, in 1934, the Jewish Autonomous Oblast was created in eastern Siberia, which still exists to this day. In the main square of its capital, Virovilian, there is a menorah, a typical symbol of Judaism. The point is that this Soviet anti-Zionism lasted only as long as it was politically convenient. It turns out that many Russian Jews began to actively participate in the Zionist project, such as David Ben-Gurion from Russian Poland or Voldemar, who was born in Kiev. In addition, many Jewish leaders believed in socialist Zionism, which was based on building the state through the kibbutzim, like collective farms that align perfectly with Marxist ideals. That is, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics saw a chance to gain an ally in the Middle East during the Cold War, so it voted in favor of the partition of Palestine. In the famous United Nations Resolution 181, encouraging other countries like Ukraine, Belarus, Poland, and Czechoslovakia to do the same. Even during the First Arab-Israeli War in 1948, the Soviets provided military support to Israel through Czechoslovakia. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, not the United States, was the first major power to support Israel. The problem was that by the 1950s, Khabib began to flirt with Washington, which made Stalin change his position again. From then on, Moscow began to openly support its enemies Egypt, Syria, and Iraq throughout the entire Cold War. Six-Day War and Yom Kippur War. Then, in the 1980s, we all know about Gorbachev's famous, desperate attempts to save the dying Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, Perestroika and Glasnost, with which diplomatic ties with Israel were resumed. Until in 1991, the great Soviet Empire fell. So what now? The newly formed Russian Federation, now led by this drunkard named Boris Yeltsin, maintains diplomatic continuity with Israel. Thus, faced with the economic disaster, there was a great wave of Jewish migration from the former Union of Soviet Socialist Republics to Israel. This led to a further strengthening of cultural ties between the two countries. Already during the Putin era, which officially began in 2000, economic and cooperation agreements flourish. However, ups and downs continue to arise. In the 2006 war against Hezbollah, Israel reported finding Russian weaponry in 2014. Putin expressed support for Israel's security during its conflict in Gaza, although he mostly focused on calling for a ceasefire. New problems arose during the civil war in Syria, as Russia openly supported the government side of al-Assad, while Israel supported dissident groups, especially the Russians. Nevertheless, both countries chose to remain pragmatic and established military coordination mechanisms to avoid incidents between their forces. In fact, to this day, both countries maintain their interests in the country. Russia partially maintains its naval base in Tartus, still under negotiation with the new government, while Israel has expanded its zone of influence in the southwest of the country in support of the Russians. Already in 2022, the Russian invasion of Ukraine begins. Israel is not participating in sanctions on Russia. However, relations become complicated again when Russia deepens its alliance with Iran, Israel's arch-enemy. A year later, the Hamas attacks occur, which start the Gaza massacre that continues to this day. And beyond a couple of vague criticisms, Putin's Russia seems to stay on the sidelines. What's going on here? So now it's time to answer the question of the video. Isn't this the perfect opportunity for Russia to build a narrative where the invasion of Ukraine looks like child's play compared to Gaza? Which is true, by the way, especially if we consider Israel's alignment with its rival, the United States. If you've been paying attention to the video, you should already have several answers. If not, don't worry, I'll summarize it for you right now. The first is the Russian diaspora in Israel. El Habib has more than 1 million Russian-speaking Jews, many with dual citizenship. 1 out of every 10 Israelis speaks Russian. This is a serious matter and is perceived in Moscow as a tool of influence. On the other hand, Russia wants to appear as a neutral actor and mediator in the Middle East, something it has been doing relatively well. Moscow maintains simultaneous relations with Israel, Palestine, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Iran, so it does not seek to align itself with one side or the other. Speaking of the latter, its relationship is also somewhat ambivalent. While it cooperates militarily with Tehran and uses its drones, Russia is also not interested in an Iran that is too strong in the region. So it prefers to stay out of getting caught up in the Ayatollah's anti-Zionist agenda. On the other hand, Russia knows that while the United States strongly supports Israel, Europe is divided on the issue. Countries like Spain or Ireland have strongly condemned Israel's actions. If Russia does the same, it could strengthen the Washington-Tel Aviv-Brussels alliance. By remaining ambiguous, it complicates the United States narrative and presents itself as a moderate actor. Israel is aware of all this, which is why it has also maintained an ambiguous policy with the Russian giant. It has not imposed significant sanctions for its invasion of Ukraine, but it has still sold weapons to Kyiv. A yes, but not a full yes. Just like Russia, it expresses concern and calls for an end to hostilities in Gaza without mentioning the word genocide. Meanwhile, it supports pro-Palestinian resolutions at the United Nations. Pure blatant hypocrisy from both sides. The answer is no, bro, it's not hypocrisy, it's realpolitik and pure pragmatism. The Russia-Israel relationship is not an alliance or a rivalry, but rather a mutual strategic coexistence. Putin doesn't see Israel as a bastion of the West, but as a powerful regional player he can negotiate with. For that reason, he prefers to have Tel Aviv as a managed adversary rather than a declared enemy. Israel is aware of this and moves its pieces in a very similar way. As you can see, the same old saying applies to both Tel Aviv and Moscow. But you see, in geopolitics there are no friends or enemies, only interests. Russia maintains an ambiguous but symbiotic relationship with Israel, which responds in the same way. Now tell me, what other reason do you think strengthens this curious relationship, which is quite sui generis in the geopolitics of our time? Remember to comment and subscribe to the channel. Also, I'm leaving my social media links in the description. And in case you want to watch the new videos in the premiere and have more interaction with me, donations via Patreon, Una Manito Net, or memberships are appreciated. See you next time.